Hello, this is Reptile Boy coming here for or with a tutorial that no one asked me for specifically, but I saw people ask this from other people like Garuga123 of Arc Editions, and I thought I could possibly do something of the sort for that. Um, so this is going to be a video series on how to make a typical Arc mod the full way through. So from concept to in-game. I wanted to just document that and see if people would like it, and if they did, then they can use that for what they plan on doing. So for this tutorial, I'm going to be doing or making an Anchiornis. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Anchiornis. It would go over a lot of the different aspects of Dino that people might want. It's fully feathered, a Paravis, so a stem bird, I believe that's what that's called, and it has feathers and all that. So there's that aspect of texturing and all that people would have questions about, and I thought it was a good choice to make a tutorial on. So here I have the wiki page pulled up for it, and a skeletal diagram. I'm going to focus mostly on this one here. This is the full one, for the concept art and modeling aspect of it. And for the concept art, I'm going to go about just how I do it. I'm not the greatest artist, but I do practice a good bit, and I have experience with this for a good few years. I started modeling and modding for Arc 3 years ago, right when COVID started. So, yeah, that was a fun time. So, before I even start on the concept art, there's things with this specific dino that I want to look through, and that would help you, whoever decides to follow along. You don't have to specifically follow along with Anchiornis, of course, just any dino in general. There's things you can go through when you're picking a dino that would help you to build a accurate version of it. To start off, also archified version of it, because there's kind of a, there's a graph here. I can't draw a straight line very well right now, between Arc and real life. There's a happy medium somewhere in here that I personally like to go and try to find the space for. So when doing that, it's good to look at the actual animal, and with Anchiornis in general, it has the pigmentation of it excellently preserved. So this is like exactly what you're going to look for pretty much if you saw an Anchiornis in real life. For the most part, there is creative liberty. You could say this is a female Anchiornis and this is a male because it has the extra plumage. But it had the black body with the red head and white stripes going all around in different aspects of it. So that's something I'm going to make sure to implement in the dino itself. Just keep that for accuracy's sake. Red colors for the hair, blacks and whites. Those are what would naturally spawn with, you know. Of course, there are other colors I could put in with it, like browns for the body, stuff like that. But that's later on into the series, of course. Looking back at the wiki page, the Wikipedia, with ARC, it's good to look at close relatives of what you're designing to see how ARC captures them. So, Paravis is within that family. Oncornis is within the Paravis family. And that is fairly close to Microraptor and Archaeopteryx, because, see, there's Paravis. And Microraptor is Dromaeosauridae, and Dromaeosauridae is right there, so it's a little bit further away from Microraptor than it is to Archaeopteryx. So Archaeopteryx is probably the better relative to take a look at generally, but of course there are aspects of Microraptor that we can take a look at. So Microraptor has the four wings that are iconic for it, and Oncornis has the same four wings, but while reading in through this, I actually saw that the the leg wings, are not as well suited for gliding or flying as Microraptors. Archaeopteryx, of course, it's more bird-like in general, so probably things closer to this is what we'd look for with plumage besides the legs. So we're just going to keep that in mind for noting it. And then, generally speaking, when you're trying to model, it's great to have a skeletal reference. So Scott Hartman, he's super popular with skeletals. He makes tons of great ones, usually in action poses. But there's ways we can get them in a more static pose, kind of like this one. This generally will be roughly what it'll look like for any model of an Oncornis, really. Joanna Kobierska, yeah. But it won't be exactly like that, of course, because it'll be artistic liberties. Like I could make my eye bigger on it, or make the tail longer. Things like that. Obviously, things don't have to be 100% accurate, because that's almost impossible to do with dinosaurs. You can also, of course, take reference from stuff like this from prehistoric animals. This is from a DeviantArt page, but it's on a Pinterest page. There's lots of these around from this one artist. So I would recommend looking for that. For if you're not looking for a skeletal reference, if that's just something that's easier for you to follow. Personally, I just prefer the skeletal references to build up upon, as I would like to. So I'm going to download my references and continue from there in my painting software. So I'm back in my painting software. I just cleaned this up a little bit to make it as clear as I could. And for now, I'm going to get my references that I have grabbed, which will be the Oncornis skeletal. It's a little small, so let's size that up. And then I have the dossiers for the Microraptor, also very small, and the Archaeopteryx and I just wanted to take a look at these um, to get the best aspect of each one and sort of use them to guide Onkeornis' design. And of course, like I said, I'm not the best artist, but I'm going to try to capture the general feel of what an Arc Dino generally has, but on the more realistic side than them, of course. Like, this is an older design, the Archaeopteryx and the Microraptor. So, even for Arc nowadays, this is a bit outdated. They would probably go for something more accurate. And um, that's generally the feel I'm going to try to go for with it. I'll probably interrupt a little bit of the speed painting throughout uh, the process, but for most of the rest of this video, it will be sort of a speed paint. Yeah.
Yeah, you just say idiot. All the same. And why you thought this was a good idea to do this in the first place?
Um, well, I'm currently working with Dubs on PaleoArc designs. And I draw a lot of dinosaurs that a lot of people seem to consider very Arc-like. One of my more famous pieces being Ledu Mahadi. And generally how I go about my design is I decide to choose a dinosaur. As, all of us do. But what I do is I make the general shape of the dinosaur before I add on the semi-realistic bits, because I work from a basis of semi-realism. Which...
No. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. Do you extend like the semi-realism to the sizing of the animal as well? Because like I know when it comes to concept art for like fan creations in Arc, just like with the game itself, there's a tendency to upscale a otherwise smaller or you know small-ish animal to be bigger than it actually is. Like, do you take that same consideration into starting a piece of art?
Yeah, it kind of it depends between the animal and kind of what I want for them. So, like, my more recent design for Silosaurus, I had been working on it for a while. I will send it here. Just send the most recent. That's fine. But Silosaurus here in the image, it looks like Silosaurus, but while it's small in real life, it would be more the size of Arcarno because of what I want it to do.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want it to do is I want it to be able to pull carts that are like a platform structure that you can build structures on and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
This is gonna be for a creature boat. And if I don't make it into a creature boat, I'll just eventually, when I can, make it myself.
Yeah, so
And...
like it,
Go ahead.
like a mix between like Mesozoic and equestrian themes so far as like the animal itself is concerned.
Pretty much. And I went through a couple of spike options, and I ended up with the image you see there, because the original design, I will send screenshots. Yeah. The original spikes look like this. They're more uniform, stuff like that. But I really wanted it to kind of pop. I wanted it to stand out a little bit more than what it did. And I came up with the uneven spikes because I had been kind of tampering it with it on a small art piece that I did for my character modeling class. Let me see if I can find it here. There it is. This is the little Herosaurus I made for my character modeling class. I had to keep it simple, but I also had to add a little bit of complexity, just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to add the spikes, and it turned out great. Um, and I thought that spike pattern would really pop with the Silosaurus design, so I moved it from the uniform spikes to the non-uniform spikes. And it looks a lot more like what I wanted it to look like. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or I do it the other way. It really depends. If I see an animal that I think is interesting first, I design the animal first and then think of it later, which is what happens with Silosaurus. Or I find a niche that I want, and I find an animal that I want to fill it. So there's like a glider niche that I wanted a dromaeosaur to kind of fill in. So I was like, what are my options? Utahraptor can't be Deinonychus because Deinonychus is already in the game. But then there's also a Kilobator. Kilobator? I don't know. But I already made a design for a Kilo long before I um finished thinking about that niche, the kind of gliding dromaeosaur niche. Let me pull up my file.
Yeah, so like while you do that, like when it comes to like the subject of accuracy with concepts, especially for a game like Ark, which is already incredibly stylized, like at least so far as Survival Evolved is concerned. Um, like, what would you say is like the decent balance to strike between realism and the what you would otherwise call like awesome bro ness of other dinosaurs in media?
I would can you specify what the question is asking?
Yeah. So like, I guess another way of putting it across would be like, how much of your design process is like strictly within the realm of the current understanding of the animal versus your creative freedoms and liberties as an artist and an individual. Like, do you like exaggerate like body proportions, features? Like, is there anything like ascientific you do with your concepts?
Well, I generally tend to keep the shape of the animal kind of really close to the original animal itself, like in real life. And sometimes I don't, but it's most of the time where I do decide, do I really it I want this to look like the animal, but I also want it to stand out to people who, aren't really into realistic creatures. A good design would be my Draco Rex.
Mm-hmm.
So Dracorex, is obviously not an actual dinosaur because it is just Juby because science says so, which sucks. but but there's a lot of exaggerated features on this animal. Two, namely, being the horns on the face and the arms. The arms on the actual reconstructions of Dracorex are much smaller, much less beefy, and they don't have as big of claws. And obviously, they don't have the dragon-like horns. But I decided to add those because I thought it would make the design cool. And a lot of people agreed.
Mm-hmm.
hmm And the idea behind this is that it would be a Pachycephalosaur that kept its juvenile traits, but mutated and became larger than its adult counterpart.
Mm-hmm.
Which kind of doesn't work for Arcpachy, but we could sneak it in there.
Yeah. So, on the subject of size, right? Like what I was saying earlier, where most people tend to scale up in art, be it an in-game model that they're making or a concept in and of itself. Is there ever a time that you've decided to scale down an animal and give it like an insect or dwarfism type bent to it?
I kind of not really. I've thought about it.
Mm.
Me and Newt, you guys know Newt. We're kind of talking about bugs and how they could work in art, as we all
As
do.
Newt does.
And an
Good guy,
idea
good
I
guy.
had for a bug was that it could be a shoulder pet, and it could be like one of those uh transportable army motorcycles, if you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So you can have a mount on your back, essentially. I don't know if that's downsizing per se, but it's kind of close to the idea that you're probably thinking of.
Yeah, because
Because it would obviously have to be relatively small to have that kind of effect.
yeah, like when it comes to art specifically, right? I do think that there is a major problem with the characters always being big, right?
Mhm.
Because you look at something like Amarga, right, compared to a Giga, right? Like the size difference between the two is like night and day, right?
Mhm.
And Amarga is already pretty big compared to what it otherwise is, and Giga is
Mhm.
just a tower of an animal.
Oh yeah,
And,
I've seen the size charts.
yeah, and this could just be my personal bias here, but I really like dwarf sauropods, just in concept because they're so the
Intriguing.
opposite. Well, intriguing, but they're the opposite of what you expect a sauropod to be, just on
Mhm.
face value what you've seen in media, right? Jurassic Park, the Brachiosaurus, right? Like rearing up and slamming its feet on the ground after it bites off the tree. That's what most people think when they see sauropods, but no one thinks about Magyar, you know.
Well, a certain dev team does.
Yeah, we can look past that one.
uh, well, I mean, I I don't know. Ankylosaurus pathotitans, the mod.
Mhm.
Um, that would be kind of close to what you're talking about, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that one. I haven't personally played with it myself, mainly because the broadcast scares me. Um, it's more startled than scared, but Yeah, it's a pretty strong animal for what it is in Path of Titans, especially when pit against the Giga and Rex and stuff like that. That's already in the game. Because while it may have more health, it's honestly not too big, not too small, not too powerful. Um, and I think an interesting Ankylosaurus concept for Arc could definitely make an interesting mod or creature submission. Plus, you can just exaggerate the hell out of those osteoderms that it has.
Mm-hmm. Like,
And
I guess that's
go
like
ahead.
another thing to bring up, right? Like the osteoderm question, right? Like,
Mhm.
it seems to me that, like, early wildcard dinosaurs had a lot of osteoderms on them. Like, seemingly, like, wherever the character artist was able to put them on, they just decided to fill them in.
Mhm.
Um, so, like, when it comes to otherwise, like, well, I shouldn't even say otherwise. When it comes to like real world structures, like biological structures on animals, like osteoderms, right? Like, are there certain places where you will avoid putting something like that on a character, or does it really just come down to, do you think this would look cool in X, Y, or Z area?
For me, animals that don't generally have osteoderms don't get them, but they do get some sort of spike arrangement. But
Mm.
if we're talking in terms of like Pycnonemosaurus being an abelisaur and not really having any evidence of osteoderms, I may put osteoderms on it because I think that looks better. And it
Mm-hmm.
also fits with the rest of its family. Um, a good example of not kind of osteoderms, but they're close enough is this guy. Um, he's
This is one of yours.
yeah,
Ah.
yeah. Big Al is gonna be making this guy for his mod.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's right. That's right. Yeah, Al's a really good dude.
um, but Mapusaurus obviously doesn't have those in real life. But I wanted to kind of stick with the idea for Carcharodontosaurids and Ark having spikes. So I decided on that spike arrangement. And I didn't really want it to overtake Carcharodontosaurus, so I kind of kept them smaller, a little less exaggerated. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but obviously they're all over the place, and it makes the animal look 100 times cooler, in my opinion. Yeah, yeah. I had an especially hard time with the spikes on the neck because at one point they were looking a bit too much like Carcharodontosaurus, and I wanted people to have the ability to kind of compare them and say, "Oh yes, this looks like it's inspired by a Carcharodontosaurus, but it's not Carcharodontosaurus."
So, like, what about like shrink wrapping then? Right, I know it's a very like contentious subject depending on who you
Mhm,
ask, right? Like, you know my opinion on shrink wrapping. I think that
mhm,
it's appropriate in some regards, like mainly sauropods. Just
mhm.
my subjective opinion. Um, yeah, but like, what's your general like uh thought about shrink wrapping? Like, is it something you always try to avoid, or is it
It's
something that can be
not
used?
it's not always avoided, but I don't tend to prefer it
Mm-hmm.
personally. There is some shrink wrapping if you look at the Mapusaurus. There's some shrink wrapping that you can see,
Mm-hmm.
and I think a little. No, never mind. No, I'm not even. Um, But it's not something that I generally draw. So it's not that I'm avoiding it, it's just that I prefer more fleshed out animals
Hmm.
because I think it makes them look stronger and more kind of stable. Like there's a point where shrink wrapping becomes too much. Yeah, Art Giga would be a good example of that. Even though it's, obviously a good animal. Um I like Carcharodontosaurus more because it's more based off the basis of realism, kind of, sort of.
Hmm. Hmm.
But you can definitely see a little bit of semi-realism in there, especially with the most recent art designs.
Yeah, like in that regard, I think Wildcard's newest designs and like their new concept artists are hitting it out of the park, right? Like some things could be a little bit different in my opinion. I think Pastel's a little bit too spiky, but you can't look at the quality of that artwork and say that it's objectively terrible. So like,
I
hmm?
don't really have very many recent ones that show some shrink wrapping. Recent art pieces. Um, I would have to do a lot of digging, but a lot of art pieces from a long time ago that I've drawn definitely had some form of shrink wrapping.
Hmm.
Think I can find. I think this one is one of them. Kind of. I'll send it anyways. This is like long time ago, very long time ago. You can even tell that it was a long time ago. This is my first drawing of Ledu Mahani I've ever done.
Really, this was the first of Ledu. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, he has a little throat pouch. I wanted to kind of keep that in the current design, and I did in a very, very nice way. But there's just a tiny bit of shrink wrapping around the eyes, as you can see. But generally, it's all fleshed out and stuff like that. It. Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, like when it comes to sauropods and in Ledo's case, like a pro sauropod, um, I'm not really against the idea of shrink wrapping them because you compare like a diplodocid or a brachiosaurid to a nodosaur, right? Like the nodosaur has much more going on for it, right? Like there's a lot of different shapes this thing has as an animal compared to
Hmm.
the otherwise just big tube that is a diplo.
Hmm. Um, think one of the best examples of shrink wrapping I have would be probably my ceratopsids.
Hmm.
It's already on Twitter. You can Diabloceratops. You can look it up from the depths. Um, the Diabloceratops is a little bit shrink wrapped in the face, mostly the nasal region. I
Hmm.
think that's okay because generally the nasal region is where another horn would be, or just some sort of very kind of bony structure that resembles a horn or a battering ram in a way. And on the Diabloceratops that I drew for depths, um, there is that structure there as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and then also on the frill, there's a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit. Um, but it really depends on the animal and what I'm basing it off of and what I want it to kind of represent in my designs.
Hmm. So, like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but like, it seems to me that like, uh, there's no bad way about going. Like, there's no bad way to design an anime. There's only bad execution.
hmm It my my design philosophy is if it fits, it fits. Um, and if you have to tamper with it, tamper with it. But generally, it's for me, not for everybody, on the basis of realism, as I've said,
Hmm. No,
because
like,
I'm a sucker for semi-realism.
mhm. And like, is there anything you would say that people should avoid when making a concept for a character?
Uh, well, when it comes to dinosaurs, one thing that peeves me a lot is people will choose a dinosaur to draw, but then make it not look like anything like the dinosaur they've chosen. Um, a good example of that would be Fasolasuchus by Risky Biscuits. I'm not saying the art is bad in any way. It's really good. I actually kind of asked Risky for a little bit of advice for Lineless. Um, they are wonderful. But Risky's design looked a bit too lizard-like. It didn't look very crocodilian at all. Um,
Hmm.
and that kind of peeved me. And a lot of people were disagreeing with me, and I'm like, that's fine. But I don't like it when personally, it's just my opinion.
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't like it when the animal doesn't represent what it's supposed to.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think anyone would disagree with you on that. Well, like, even though you said people were disagreeing with you, it definitely makes sense. It's a much better way of saying it.
hmm And the ARC team did a really good job of making it look like Fasolasuchus. Like even with how spiky the guy is.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like it's a really good example of what I'm talking about when I say I like semi-realism. One of my more favorite designs, personally, is my Hatzegopteryx. I drew this guy a long time ago, but I eventually had to redo the wings because they were kind of bothering me with how they looked. Here's the guy. He has a really big head. I need to fix that. Yeah. Well, I mean, his head is pretty big for its body, anyways, in real life. So,
Yeah,
but
the real enigmas.
yeah, um, Hatzegopteryx has to be one of my more favorite and probably one of the older designs that I've drawn. And this guy got a bit of a revamp with the wing area, and then I just redid all his coloring and shading and stuff, and also added a few sketches around him.
Hmm.
Um, he looks a lot more realistic than most of my designs, but is also still exaggerated. Like he has the angry eyes. He has that like he has the angry eyes look. Take
Yeah.
this into consideration. When you are drawing an animal, focus on the eyes just for a little bit. Just focus on the eyes. And I will tell you why. There are two different kinds of eyes that are very popular with games like Ark, people, fans of Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, stuff like that. And that is the slit pupils versus the round pupils. and I will tell you the differences between them and why I generally tend to prefer brown pupils. So the slit pupils are, I guess I could just say snake eyes, because
Mhm.
that's generally what people call them. The snake eyes kind of don't convey a lot of intelligence. It kind of conveys more primitive behavior in what would otherwise be a intelligent animal. Um, in Jurassic Park, first two movies, and Jurassic World, all three of the movies, the raptors have snake eyes. But the third Jurassic Park, those raptors didn't. And that gave them a really different feel. They had the round pupils, and the difference between them is the snake eyes are more animalistic. Sorry for repeating myself. While the round pupils convey intelligence. Because in our little monkey brains, round pupils means intelligence in what we would otherwise call stupid animal.
Mhm.
Not always, but mainly. And that's why I generally tend to prefer the round pupils.
It's funny you were describing it like that, because like whenever I've seen like snake eyes or like goat eyes, I know goat eyes are pretty popular for herbivores and such.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's always been a matter of tone and like, what is this animal communicating, right? Like what I have a more like emotional interpretation of the difference between the two, right? Like, you see a parasaur with like goat eyes, right? Like, okay, it's gonna be pretty docile, but there is a chance that
Mm-hmm.
like with any other animal, like if I piss it off, it's gonna fight back. Versus, seeing raptors in Jurassic Park with snake eyes, it's like, no, like these guys are out to get you.
Mm-hmm. It Snake Eye, yeah. Snake Eyes is generally seen to kind of be more you're in danger than anything else. So I understand that. Um, but one thing I really hope for the future is that we get a change in that. I want I want all kinds of eyes to convey danger in some shape or form.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you show my if you show my profile picture to your audience, you can kind of see what I mean. My profile picture has unsettled people and has kind of startled them. um, and I'm not sorry.
You will be afraid of me.
But, you can make round pupils absolutely fucking terrifying. Like reflections off the eyes of dogs or cats. I remember when I was little, I had like a cat under my porch, and I looked under the porch and I saw the cat's eyes kind of doing that glowy thing that they usually do when light is shining off of them. And that unsettled the flip out of me.
Mm.
Like a lot.
So, like, because like we're making the series for the layman, right? It sounds very like crude, but like well, like normal people, right? Like, people who want to do this for fun, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what would you say to someone who is thinking about either A, becoming a type of paleo artist or concept artist for a mod project, if not someone who wants to develop their own concepts to later turn into models, which we will talk about in the future.
Mhm.
But what would your advice be to them?
Well, if we're talking in the basis of art, what I would say is take into consideration the art style of the game, right? There's a lot of different art styles in art. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. But focus on the more modern art style of Arc. Focus on what current Arc and more recent dinosaurs have to offer.
Hmm.
And then consider your design and what you want to do. The semi-realism part, good example being Carcharodontosaurus, um, is kind of what inspires me for most of my designs. Hatzegopteryx, I wanted it to look menacing. And I was able to convey that, at least for myself. I don't know if other people got that. He's supposed to
Mm-hmm.
look like an angry boy. Yeah, because he's not, especially with the concept I made for him. Um, but pay pay a lot of attention to the art style of the game that you're making these designs for, just in general. Because believability of whatever design you're going for in this specific game has a lot to do with how much it looks like it could be an official concept art.
Mm-hmm. Like I'm not a 2D artist, so like I wouldn't know where to begin with stuff like this, right? I know I don't know the correct terminology for it, but like some people make like stick figures as like the rig, quote unquote, of their drawing, and like put circles on joints and whatnot, right? Like what's that called? Like, when you do that? That's
That's blocking out. I call it a blocker
mm,
sketch
okay, yeah,
personally
like
because the way my sketches start out, can probably find you a really good example of that. But the way my sketches start out is like a little bit of some lines, some circles, and I generally try to get the shape of the body in my skeletal sketch, and then work off of that for the rest of the sketch.
mhm.
Um, I will send. I will send. Do not mean to grab that. This guy. It's a little transparent. Well, not seeable, but
Mhm.
that's kind of what they look like. Kind of, that's kind of what my skeletal sketches look like. And from what you can see, I get the shape of the head, and then the shape of the body. And generally, I don't draw the tail, but generally the tail would just be the top line for the tail that you see there. And then I draw what would be presumably the hip joints and the shoulders, and then map out where the legs are gonna go there.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
I could probably find a really good example in my Kilobutt wallet. Give me 1 second.
Have you ever done turnaround pieces where so you see the straightforward view and the straight side view of a character?
Uh, a few times. I'm not wanting to share them though.
Yeah,
They're
yeah, no worries.
embarrassing. There it is. So I'll show you my Kilobitor before I send the skull to sketch. You guys have seen it before. He's been doing
yeah.
He didn't start out like that, obviously. What he started out like. He started out as all my sketches start out. Sometimes, depending on the animal, I have to sketch the fleshed out body. So here's the guy, but there's the general kind of body structure that I tend to go with. As you can see, the shape of the body is blocked out there. And then also the hip joints and where all that stuff would go. And then the neck. And then after that, because he's feathered, I have to do like what I would call the naked sketch. His feet are a little there. But that gets fixed later on.
Okay.
And then I just do the general sketch of what I want. Like feathered. It's there it goes. Yep. And then I get a final sketch.
Okay, interesting.
And this is the final sketch, like the final before I add line art. Like if today I would probably not get rid of the sketch and I would use the sketch as line art because I like sketches more than I like actual line art. But I think I did really nice with the line art for this guy. Because that was kind of what I was going for. But if you look at yeah. More cleaner than most people, which I found kind of surprising because it's like one of the messiest sketches I've ever done. Um, and then you can just look at the final result, and you can kind of see how I translated the final sketch into a finished art piece.
Mm-hmm.
I based the whole thing off of my Utah Raptor I drew a long time ago. Send it. Not the best art piece, but also not my worst. This is one of my few attempts to actually get into lineless art.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And like lineless art just more so refers to like artwork without like a harsh border around an individual thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But you could see where I got the bearded vulture look from.
Yeah. So it's a very nice addition, yeah.
Yeah, I just translated it better onto a Kilobator. Any more questions?
Not that I can think of, Reptilian. Yeah, I think this was a pretty good episode. Like if we're gonna continue this into the future, which I hope.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoyed this.
Well, another place that for those of you in the ARC submissions community, a good place for you to look would be the pinned comments and the community art channel. Because I actually went in depth with my art process in there in like four little sentences, couple more than that maybe. you can see the process there. And I actually took screenshots of my process. I can send them all, actually. Give me 1 second. Yeah, let me grab it for you. I don't know if you're in that. I don't know if you're in there. I'll just post the link here. But I can just send the screenshots of the process here. And I essentially went through explaining how I decided to design my Saechania. And here's all the images. So, obviously, have to start with the skeletal sketch, block out. Then you get the general shape of the animal. And then you draw on top of that with kind of the elements that you want. And I decided to draw the osteoderms before I drew the rest of the animal because I'm not used to ankylosaurs. So it's easier for me to get them down first before I decide to draw them in. And then as I go, you can see the progress of the osteoderms. And I wish I got more screenshots between the previous one and the fourth one. But you can kind of see where it's a bit unfinished, where the osteoderms clip with the general art outline. The idea behind Saechania is that I wanted it to look like it was super armored, unlike Ankylosaurus, which is just spiky galore. One of the design choices I decided to do was the head, right? It looks like a helmet if you look at it close enough. That was a design choice I decided to do because I thought it would make the animal look tougher, and I was able to convey that pretty well. Now, the osteoderms may be in excess, but that was the point. But it's kind of a step-by-step process for what I decided to do.
Yeah, it's very useful to have that kind of stuff to show to other people, because, like, when you look at anything, at least in my opinion, when you look at, like, most 3D or pretty much, like, any, like, artistic resources specifically for dinosaurs, there's not a lot of content there relative to the dearth of information there is about, like, humans or, like, any other real-world animal. There's a seeming lack of coverage that dinosaurs and paleo media has in terms of, like, the how-to process.
Yeah, it does kind of suck. It sucks a lot. But
like
it's also, these animals are really old. Like,
yeah,
their bones are rocks. That's how old they are.
Like, I could have swore they were like 75 years old. Like Elton John's looking like a museum exhibit these days.
More like 75 million years old.
Yeah, like I guess that's like something we're trying to like solve with this
Mm.
video series, right? Like, because even though like what we're doing is relative to Arc, right? There still is a lot of things that can be said about the various other things we're going to talk about that are still reliant on some. Well, I shouldn't say on some that are still reliant on the processes that you would see in like human model creation, like whether it be like the blocking out stages. It's just been very helpful for me.
I personally, humans are a lot harder for me than dinosaurs.
Mm.
Like, drawing people hands, people feet, maybe even faces. This is difficult for me. But I can draw human like hands on like on like an animalistic anthropomorphic animal, like a bird or something. I can do that just fine. I can't draw human hands for the life of me.
Hmm.
I excel in dinosaur hands though, for some reason. Yeah. It was a long time before I was comfortable drawing dinosaur feet and hands. As weird as that sounds. Um
Yeah, even like modeling, like it was something that would just get me with like blocking out, and like Reptile, this better than anybody is like sauropod feet, especially like the back feet, like because I'm one of those
mhm.
people who is more willing to take creative liberties than most in terms of like the biology of the animal.
Mhm.
Like I'll look at like the back feet of GWE models and say like, oh, I like those. I think this would look good on this animal compared to the like real paleo accurate feet. So like trying to do both is like
Mhm.
it drives me a little bit insane sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. I have to say though, some of my favorite dinosaurs to draw are dromaeosaurs, even though they're not really my favorite class or family of dinosaur.
Mm-hmm.
I like drawing dromaeosaur-like animals, like this guy. This little guy. It's a little dragon from project I have. Yeah. Um, I was really proud of the legs when I drew this guy. Like, exceedingly proud because the original look of this guy looked a little more. Mm, you get what I'm, you get what I'm meaning. I could show it a little bit more. I could show it.
Yeah, go for it.
This is kind of unrelated to ARC, but it is related to my design philosophy. But here's the other guy. Yeah. Well, it's more supposed to be an Arctic species. Um, the idea behind my project is basically how I would imagine quote unquote realistic dragons. And very recently I went through and decided to draw a lot of prehistoric and basal dragons and wyverns and stuff like that. And also decided to draw some interesting body designs and body plans for what I think like something like a pterosaur would feel if there wasn't anything there for them. One of my more favorite designs would be this guy. Send it. I drew a lot of these guys. Um uh and kind of what they would look like. Um So it's just I'm not working on it right now because I'm getting ready for the new term for my school.
Hmm.
Um, but but this is kind of generally what I like to do. I like to design and play games. A lot of games, way more games than I probably should.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
um, and you can kind of see that the guy's more ichthyosaur like. I like ichthyosaurs. They're my favorite marine prehistoric reptiles. And I have my fingers crossed for marine iguanas to evolve if they don't go extinct.
Are they endangered?
I think so.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, but a lot of my basal dragon designs are based off of actual uh like basal birds. Archaeopteryx, Microraptors, stuff like that. Like dinosaurs that actually became birds. Because I wanted to, like I said, I want it to be, excuse me, on the basis of realism. And so I'll send just a couple screenshots of between the first and the almost last. So these guys got, don't mind the names, they were like work in progress. Um, but you could kind of see the transition between non-flight and almost flight. And it's kind of, the last one is kind of similar to Microraptor in a way. And one of the most popular little guys I drew is Ceratodracus. Most of these names are just, I'm just bullshitting them, by the way. Don't. uh And my plan for the rest of the project, now that I've got all these basal designs down, is to go biome to biome and design dragons that I think would fit in either biome.
Hmm.
I've already got a couple that I know would fit in certain biomes, but in general. But anyways, but that was a little bit off tangent, but it's a bit of an insight of what I do outside of ARC.
Yeah, I mean, even though like these dragons and other fantasy animals like aren't remotely related to Ark in terms of theme, like you doing them, like creating them,
Wyvern.
drawing them, wyverns. Yes, sorry, my apologies. But doing that still feeds your head creatively, and
Yeah.
later goes on to inform how you do your Ark stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It definitely changed a lot of how I'm kind of drawing now. Gotta get back into the swing of ARC because the last couple of weeks of the term were a little bit hectic.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
once I get back into it, I will definitely have a much better understanding of what I'm trying to do thanks to this little project I did. Yep. One thing I hope
Yeah.
for the future for myself is being able to 3D model. Yay. Well, luckily I got a character modeling class. So, yeah, I'll be learning how to do that. That's gonna be fun. Same teacher that I had last term too.
Do you like the teacher?
Yeah.
Good, good.
I like
Yeah,
a
that's
lot of
gonna
my
make all the
instructors.
difference.
Yeah. And for those of you out there that are deciding to go to college for this stuff, don't.
Yeah,
But
like
if you are, um, if you don't have a very interactive teacher or a very engaging teacher, just focus on what you want to do. Because the moment I stopped doing the human model, I'll send it here. It was very creepy when I last touched it. But when I stopped doing that, yeah, not very fun. Started doing the dinosaur. I got the dinosaur done in like 3 days.
hmm
Flat. Like, so focus on what you want to do. And don't let nobody stop you. Because the more you focus on what you want to do, the more interested you are in learning. And the more interested you are in learning, the more you learn.
yeah, yeah.
It's and if you're not interested in what you're learning, try to engage yourself with it. Uh, level of interest takes a huge part into how you learn to do this stuff.
Yeah. Oh, and like that's one of like the beauties of Ark as a game, right? Like, and our ability to add content into it, because like you can do some pretty wild stuff in 3D and in the dev kit that would not even resemble what Ark is out of the box. Like
Mhm.
despite the faulty code that some people may say the dev kit has, which I'm in agreement with to a certain degree. Like there are still a lot of amazing things you can pull off, like with this game, and like the opportunity that it gives people to express themselves in all kinds of ways creatively. Like I see it every day, and like I'm amazed by what I see coming out of people.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm really excited to start getting into what you guys are doing right now. Um, Even if it's going to be a painstaking process, as it probably will be, and this is something I want to make a career out of. It Now, if it doesn't work, I have a plan B. I I have to I have to have a plan B, especially this day and age.
Oh yeah.
Um, but this is something I really want to do, namely, uh, 3D modeling and animation. I first want to learn how to 3D model a lot better than I currently do. Um, yeah.
Ditch
Um,
Maya, go straight to Blender.
that's what I want to do, but they have me doing Maya, unfortunately. So I'm gonna have to focus on Maya for a little while. But when I get a chance, I will focus on Blender a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
What really helps is having my dad support me with all this.
Yeah, like that's important. Like having familial support. Like the support of your friends. Doing this kind of thing, because it can be demotivating. Like when you don't have like, not that like uh affirmation. Like it's not the reassurance of your peers and of your family, right? Right. It makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Because like, at least for me, like temperamentally. And this is probably just deviating way off the topic. Um, what all of this modding and 3D stuff has enabled me to do is become more executive in my decision making,
Mhm.
and I less carefree than I otherwise was in the past.
Mhm.
Like like most regards. Like work. With school, I'm getting there. Hopefully.
I have like a year left of this stuff that I'm doing.
Hmm.
So exciting! I need to get I need to get a PC, like an actual PC. I need like I'm on a Surface Book 2.
Oh yeah. You need a desktop.
Yeah, I need a desktop.
Hmm.
Like I could kind of do it with my little stupid thing that I have, but if I want to have higher quality stuff, I definitely need to learn. Not learn. I need a desktop. There's
Hmm.
one I have my sights on, but I can't really afford it because I don't have $500. I'm looking at places like the Facebook Marketplace. And yes, I am aware I can get scammed. Um, but if people are not willing to receive half a payment before they send it, and then half a payment when it arrives, I just avoid them entirely. Um, but once I get enough money to hopefully get it, I need to get 75 for a deposit on it so that it's on hold until I'm ready for it. Um, I will be drawing a lot and will probably have to raise my price. Much as I hate to do that. But kind of also, I don't really hate doing that because it means money in my pocket. The more I can help people draw, even if they're not, trying to do it for art, the better. Because a lot of people aren't very confident with this stuff and need a little bit of direction or ideas and inspiration.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I am happy to have been able to provide that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been working on this for a while, and I really need to crack down on it. Share my screen. Nothing else is open. I'm gonna close that. There we go. You should be able to see my screen here. You see it? This is for Titanus Venator. This is a commission that I've been working on for a little while. I'm only in the black and white process right now because this is
Hmm.
my kind of newer process of doing this stuff. If I add my highlight back, you can kind of see it in much more detail. It's a lot brighter than it should be, but I'll go back and fix that when I need to. But it's a work in progress, and one of the screenshots I sent before was actually of its progress. But here's like the line art and stuff like that. I added myself. I have my own texture and stuff to the guy, make it more gruff looking. Um, and if we go down here, get it back in this crap again. This is the final sketch. Kind of like with the Kilobator.
Hmm.
And then this is yeah, yeah, I asked them before. And this is the base. But yeah. I can send my watermark if you want to slap that over this so that it's not stolen by somebody. Yeah.
Damn. What am I gonna do now?
You're gonna suck it up, Buttercup. I don't know. I'd have to ask Titanus. You're very
Yeah,
welcome.
yeah, I appreciate it. It was a very, I'm not sure, but I did appreciate you coming on.
Yeah. I'm glad to be able to share how I go about my artistic experience. Like, I want to be helpful in any way I can. And if people find this helpful, great.
Do you have any links that people can find you at?
Well, I have my Twitter. Um, that's pretty much about it. I don't post a lot though.
Mm-hmm.
I will have to start doing that more because thanks to Depths tweeting the Diablo Ceratops, people are following me. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm gonna need to post them in the future anyways if I decide to make games. So, I mean, I could also just pull a Sean Murray from No Man's Sky. Just tweet a single emoji and make people interpret it. Let me pull up my Twitter. Not on it if you cannot. I'm not on it a lot if you cannot tell. Um, yeah. Well, it would be Jade underscore times 2, 317. So 2 underscores. Jade 2 underscores 317. As you know, it generally is. I might open a little community Discord for people who just want to go there, share art, relax, chill out, talk with people, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually. But for now, you can, I guess, follow me on Twitter if you want. I'll post a bit more. I'll post a bit more art, probably some dragons, some dinosaurs, stuff I've done previously, stuff I'm doing now. But for those of you in Discord, I'm always there. Mm-hmm. My only ask is that you please do not ping me a lot. Please don't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like if I don't know you very much, please don't DM me. I find it very annoying.